Hello, everybody. Welcome to the American Dream. Today we have two fine guests from ECCO, Essex County Community Organization. Father Brian Flynn, who's pastor at St. Mary's and Sacred Heart, the collaboration, and Dr. Alexandra Piñeros Shields. Alexandra, you're the executive director. And Father Flynn, you're the president.
President of the board, that's correct, Jim.
Okay. So how's St. Mary's before we go? I got to give a
St. Mary's is good, you know. We started the school year off well at St. Mary's and Sacred Heart, and St. Mary's is a great downtown parish with that downtown church that is really welcoming to all. So I'm very blessed to be there.
As an aside, if you may be able to tell by the grin, but Father Flynn is one of the funniest priests I've ever met. He just has that ability to throw out a one-liner, which makes life easy when you're talking about a difficult subject sometimes. And Dr. Piñeros Shields, you have a great education. You've taught at Providence College and Harvard International, and you've had a variety of jobs that make you well-suited for your current job. So let me talk with you first, Father. Can you talk about, and you cut in anytime you want, talk about ECCO, what's going on there?
Sure. Well, ECCO, the Essex County Community Organization, when I first came to Lynn in 2010, quickly approached me to be involved, and I was wondering what is ECCO all about, although I had been involved with an organization like ECCO a little bit in Brockton when I was there, the Brockton Interfaith organization. And so I met at that time with people from ECCO. And the key to ECCO is we try to make change in our community and in the nation and the world in which we live, is we're always trying to remember to recognize the dignity of each and every person and that they are created in the image and likeness of God. And I think that's the uniqueness to ECCO, is that it is an organization that's a faith-based organization. We find it's our foundation in God, our Creator. You know, we look to sacred Scripture and see, you know, what does Scripture tell us and how is that being played out in our world. So it's very, it's very attractive to me as a faith leader in the community to connect with ECCO and to try to bring those Scripture values to life in the world that we live, in the community that we live.
I was delighted to see you join the organization, but it's more than just religious people, right?
Oh, sure.
Why don't you describe the structure of...
Well, it's made up of a number of primarily faith-based communities of all different faiths. They're Christian faiths. They're people from the Jewish faith. Rabbi Margie
She's going to be on the show later on.
Right. She's one of our staff members, a very key staff member for us. We're also connected with the North Shore Labor Council, correct? Is another key member. And the thing that what we pride ourselves in by being connected to these organizations, these faith-based organizations, is when we look to what issues we're going to deal with, they come from the ground up. You know, that's so key to our organization. And our board of directors, you know, they're great people, they're talented people, but they're also people who've been involved on the grassroots level of ECCO. So it's not people who might be, you know, distant from the real work that we do. You know, who just may have knowledge about what we do. They're people who have really been in the trenches and still are in the trenches.
Jeff
and
Crosby.
Do that work. Jeff Crosby. I mean, all of our board members, you will see at rallies or at community meetings. You know what I'm saying? It's not all of the meetings, but because that's where they came from. They were chosen from that group.
So, Alexander, what do you do?
So I tried to keep all of what,
everything.
What Father Brian has just mentioned, to keep all of these congregations and the North Shore Labor Council engaged in what has been identified by the community as the key issues. There's 37 member congregations. our offices are here in Lynn, but we stretch from Lynn all the way to Gloucester.
Right.
So we have the pockets, the churches are, the congregations are mostly in Lynn, Peabody, Salem, Beverly, and Gloucester, with a few in the towns surrounding those, Swampscott. And one of the principal tasks that I do, the one that I care most deeply about, is to create spaces and mechanisms so that people who are experiencing stress because of the way the economy has developed over the last few decades, growing inequality, people who are experiencing oppression because of their race or immigration status, to create spaces and mechanisms that in which those people can identify what they see as the key issues or the key aspects within a larger issue that they want allies to address. And so a lot of it is community organizing, it's popular education and training and leadership development.
Well, speaking about training, that program that Tony Dunn runs,
yes,
that came out of ECCO.
That's right. Tony Dunn is just a wonderful, wonderful human being, and he runs this great opportunity, the E-Team. It is a machinist training program. It's been operating for almost 20 years. ECCO founded it. And, about 30 young people are trained, and by the end of a 31-week program, they're able to get jobs that are high-paying jobs as machinists. So it's a great opportunity.
It's a fantastic
it's very good.
program. So some of the people that go into that program, they're making minimum wage, $8 an hour, $9 an hour. And when they get through, they're skilled machinists, and they can make an awful lot of money with benefits.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So great work. What other kind? So are there any other organizations besides the North Shore Labor Council in the churches and synagogues involved? No, just okay.
I mean, we collaborate with we work closely with the New Lynn Coalition, with Neighbor to Neighbor, with Lynn United for Change on campaigns. Like, we worked really hard to raise the minimum wage from $8 to $11, the ballot question, and also to make sure that all Massachusetts workers are able to earn sick time, regardless of whether you're temporary or seasonal, part-time. So on the actual work of the campaigns, we do collaborate with other organizations.
Okay.
And I think that's important. Like I said, the issues that we often look to work on do come from the ground up, but we also recognize that there are issues going on statewide that are generally in relation some way to these issues, economic, benefits and opportunity for others. So ECCO is also willing and excited to tap into some of these broader campaigns also, because we realize if we join with other organizations, getting signature for increase on minimum wage, or getting signatures for the fair share amendment, on taxes for people making over $1 million, we can't do that alone as ECCO necessarily.
Sure.
But it's an issue we are concerned about, and we can join with statewide, other groups coming together to work on those issues and to help advance them.
And you're encouraged by the Cardinal or by the church, or not discouraged?
The Cardinal, well, I always say, social justice is the best kept secret in the Catholic Church because there's a lot written about it, but we don't see often a lot of action on it.
The Bible talks about the poor all the time.
There we go.
That's right.
And the Cardinal is extremely supportive of it. The Cardinal is extremely busy, obviously, but a number of times we have gone to the Catholic Conference, which is the lobbying arm of the bishops in Massachusetts, and we meet with them, present an issue. It's usually already on the Cardinal's, plate. Good. It sometimes just takes a meeting to push that along a little bit, and we often get a statement from the Cardinal on the issue. And for me as a pastor, that's wonderful because I can put those statements in the bulletin, then preach about them and in a sense have my cover when somebody who doesn't agree, just say, well, I'm just kind of reiterating what the Cardinal has stated. So
when you say the issues come from the ground up, what do you mean by that? I mean, is it by polls, focus groups, individual members?
Do you want to describe it?
Sure. So there's a number of mechanisms. We wouldn't call them focus groups, but essentially that's what they are. Yeah. We have community meetings where we have people usually turn to a neighbor or someone sitting next to them and share. We often ask people, what keeps you up at night? Right? And unfortunately, these days, a lot of things are keeping us up at night. And what people are concerned at a gut level for themselves or for others in their families or in their community, their neighbors. And it's through consensus. We also, so we make decisions through consensus. We also will have, coffee with individuals. So we spend a lot of time in the community talking to folks and gathering data, I guess, right, to identify. A number of years ago, and then we have assemblies where we bring, after all of that, we bring people together for a vote.
How often do you have assemblies?
Last time we had an assembly was 2 years ago. And the reason why we don't want to have them very often is that some of the things that were identified are issues that are going to take a while to resolve, right? So economic inequality. It's really hard to make ends meet if you're in the middle class, if you're a working class, it's hard to make ends meet. The price of a higher education is outpacing inflation. People can't afford to send their kids to school, to university, to colleges. If you work minimum wage, you can't pay your bills. I mean, people have to have 2 or 3 jobs. So these are things that take a long time to be resolved. And so that was one of the things identified. Another issue that was identified was issues around immigration. And then more recently, folks in the Black churches were concerned about their experiences because of their race in the city. And one of the things...
In the city of Lynn?
In the city of Lynn. And one of the things that we had a great success last year was working with then Chief Coppinger to do a training on implicit bias for his command staff and for our leaders. We had about 200 people. We had a professor from Seton Hall University Law School come, and it was a really good time to be together when across the nation those kind of dialogues are not happening. There's way too many tensions, but the chance to be in the same room and to talk to each other and learn what the science of implicit bias tells us, that because we live in a society that has structural racism, all of we breathe the air, and so we all have biases that are unconscious, that we don't want, we don't really want them, but there are ways for us to be conscious. And it's clear to folks in the congregations that we have those biases just like anybody else has those biases. So it was good to do the training together for all of us, both the Lynn Police Department and then people who are involved with ECCO.
And one of the challenges of the board is, as Alexandra said, the last big assembly was about 2 years ago, where these issues of immigration, these big issues arrive that do take a long time to work on, and you kind of chip away at them in many cases. But one of the challenges of the board is to kind of have to say, direct our staff and direct our members, no, we just can't do that right now. We have issues we're working on. We have limited staff. We have limited funding. And although it may be a very good issue that somewhere down the road we would like to tackle, we just can't give it our full, because it would just divide us too much, and we wouldn't, you'll try to do a couple of things really well as opposed to many things not so well. So part of the board challenge is to, at conversations, here's an issue that they're concerned about over here, and we may find a small way we can participate in it. Maybe there's going to be a rally about something, and we'll notify, our member organizations that, there's going to be a gathering about this, if anyone can go. But we're limited on the number of issues that we can take on and take on successfully, I think.
So the Black Americans have been hearing that for a long time, that we don't have enough resources, we got to wait, and how do you deal with that? I mean, their problem, in my view, is urgent.
Yeah.
I had Darryl Merkinson on the show
Oh,
a
good.
couple of times, and I had Chief Coppinger, and they both did a fabulous job. Chief he's really a progressive. Well, he's no longer the chief, but he's really a progressive in terms of getting training for his department. And Darryl is certainly progressive in his views.
He's very active with ECCO.
He's active.
Yeah.
Well, one of the ways that we like to think about it, or at least what I've brought to ECCO, is actually from one of my favorite books. It's by legal scholars Lonnie Guinier, who's at Harvard University, as you know, and Gerald Torres, who's a law professor at University of Texas Law School. They wrote this amazing book called The Miner's Canary, and it's about race and racism. And in that book, they argue that race is like the canary, right? So the canary's respiratory system is more sensitive to the toxic fumes in the mine, and so the miners know that if the canary dies, they need to get out because they're not going to last long either. So what these legal scholars say is that race can be a diagnostic tool to know what the political and economic toxicities of society are. That people of color, blacks, Latinos, anyone who's oppressed, are the first to fall. But it's not about the canary. It's not about the people of color. It's about the mine, and we're just the first to experience it. So, for example, one example is the mortgage crisis. Black America had been losing their homes for several decades before it hit white middle-class America. And so we have the issue of racism and all of the things that are around that at the center, because, as Father Brian said, we care deeply about the humanity and human dignity of each individual because of our faith traditions. All the faith traditions, regardless of which one, have that at the center. And I agree with what you're saying, that for too long the Black community has been put aside. And so we have it front and center. But we also know that it's about all of us, because if we think that what Blacks are experiencing is just about them, then it's misguided. It eventually, those issues eventually hit the rest of society. And I think that the Flint, Michigan water issue, right? It's intense there, but eventually, if we're not careful, it will hit all of us. The opioid crisis. So there's a whole series of examples we can give. And so part of what community organizing is about finding out what is it in people's self-interest. So it's about, we're people of faith, but we also have interests that, because we care about our families, we care about our children, our grandchildren. And so one of the goals of ECCO is for people to understand that we're all in this together, that God has given us this beautiful planet. We are actually all in all of it together, and we have to work together, and that some may fall first. You know, you remember the beautiful words of Pastor Neil Miller in Germany. First they came for the trade unionists,
absolutely do, yeah.
And I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't do anything. Then they came for the communists, and I wasn't a communist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't say anything because I was a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left.
Charlie Ryder had that on his wall. He's the former business agent of Local 201.
Well, and another issue that I don't think we've addressed quite yet, that we work a lot on right now, is the criminal justice reform, which is an issue that, you know, very much affects people of color, you know, in our communities. And that's a main focus, too, that Rabbi Margie and Cherish work on.
We're working on bail reform.
Yeah.
What's the problem with bail reform? I had a couple of judges on here, and they're really good people, and they're good judges, and they don't see a problem. I mean, they impose bail based on their assessment of whether an accused is going to show up for the next event in court. And I know, so what's your story about bail? What's the problem with bail?
So 42% of the folks at the Essex County Jail are there because they can't pay bail. And oftentimes it's less than $1,000. So they're there because they're poor. And so
Very interesting.
It's a poor people's issue, right? It disproportionately affects people who just don't have the funds, and their family networks don't have the funds. So we're talking about whole communities of people.
So we need to educate the judges about what poverty is, what it really is.
The bail issue is a poverty issue, and there are quite a number of states who have reformed their bail system, and so there's like all sorts of community hours. So they try to do different types of systems.
You mean in lieu of bail?
Yes, in lieu of bail.
Community work?
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
for sure, if there's someone who's a threat to the community, like you don't want that person out, right?
Story.
That's a different story. And we're also working on, along criminal justice, at the statewide level, there's a bill at the State House called the Justice Reinvestment Act, which is a big omnibus bill, but it has very good potential right now. And so we have had leaders in ECCO going to the State House the last few weeks, every week. We've been meeting with our legislators throughout all the cities of Essex County. So that's part of the kind of the canary in the mine, right? We think that what is happening to Blacks and Latinos in the criminal justice system is a warning that we need to look at the criminal justice system for all of us. If you look at Western democracies, the developed world, we have more people incarcerated than any other country, more people incarcerated than China. So and what the Black community are experiencing is a warning sign for us that there's something that needs to change.
That's been a problem since day one of our democracy, right? Mm-hmm. Let's go back to ECCO for a minute, Father. How many members do you have on your board of directors? Let's talk about some structural things for a minute.
16.
16 members. 16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I teach parliamentary procedure, and I wouldn't want to have in front of a board with 60 people on it.
Yeah, 16, and they come from, our member organizations.
Yeah.
And we have a great representation of those organizations. And then for the staff, we have Alexandra, who's our director, and Rabbi Margie Klein-Ronkin and Cherish Casey, who are our organizers also. And then so much of the work, the mission, is done by members of those communities.
Yeah,
we try to have a team in each congregation. Kind of your go-to people.
I've been to some of your events.
Yeah, I mean it's and then we and even below that you might have what we like to call the worker bees. When we need something specific done, they're doing it. But the teams and the congregations are called to kind of keep the pulse on the congregation where those people are coming from. And then reporting
you did some
to us.
groups on immigration last year. I went to some of those things. In the church in Swampscott?
Yes.
Yeah. What's going on? We're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. What's going on with immigration right now, from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think that we have a system of detention that feeds into this mass incarceration where on any given night we have about 34,000 immigrants in detention, and it's at the cost of $161 per night. That's a lot of taxpayer money, and 70%, almost 70% of detention centers are private companies, and so it's very profitable. And I think that the current administration's increasing enforcement feeds into that profit-making system. Families are really scared. Families in Lynn are really scared. We've been having clinics. We're having one this Sunday in Gloucester. We've had a number in congregations here in Lynn. We've had some in Peabody and in Salem since January. We've had one a month at least, sometimes two, trying to get the word out for people to know their civil rights. But they're scared. we've heard many times that parents are afraid to go out. The children are afraid to go to school because they're afraid when they come back, their parents might be home.
Oh my
And
God.
as you know, immigration violations are administrative violations. They're not criminal violations. So it's really a very sad situation.
It's pathetic.
And that's alive in our parishes too. You know, I mean, people have come to me very concerned now because of their status, and they're just afraid. That's exactly what it is. They're afraid.
And
of
it's across the board. I still work at the Irish Immigration Center. There's over 60,000 undocumented Irish in the Boston area. And so it's not just Latinos, like there are a lot of European undocumented folks. We've got some Asian undocumented folks. It's a sad time for immigrants right now. And most immigrants, it's not like you have the undocumented people here and I'm an immigrant and the ones that came in the right way. Most families, almost 80% of immigrant families are mixed status families. So someone might have a green card, someone might be, so that you can't really divide us up. We're all together. So all immigrants, whether we have a green card or not, we're all really scared and worried.
That's one of the saddest things about this whole thing, is a sister was born in America, so she's an American citizen, and her brother is an undocumented immigrant because their parents came.
Yeah, it's a big problem. I wish there was if there was a form that they could fill out, if there was a process they could follow, we could be helping in the congregations do that.
But they don't want to fill them out.
But there's no applications to fill out because the Congress has failed over the last decade. You know, we met with Congressman. We had a 700-person meeting with Congressman Tierney. We met actually this week with Congressman Moulton. Congress has not created some kind of a law that it will enable these people to apply, pay fines if necessary, whatever it is. So right now there's nothing for them to apply for.
Okay. Sorry, we're going to have to wrap this up. It's been very interesting. Thank you both very much, and hope to see you again.
Thank you very much for having us.
Okay, you're welcome. That's it for tonight.
Keep chatting, right?